My daughter-in-law didn't show up at my son's funeral. Hours later, she posted a picture drinking in. My daughter-in-law didn't show up at my son's funeral. A few hours later, she posted a picture of herself drinking on a beach in Cancun with the gardener. The caption read, "Enjoy life while you can." That's when I got a message from my son and froze. It said, "Dad, come to my house." Now, standing in that funeral home on a gray Tuesday morning, watching the small crowd gather to say goodbye to Richard, I couldn't stop glancing at the entrance. Maybe she was delayed. Maybe her flight was late. There had to be a reason Olivia, my daughter-in-law of 8 years, wasn't there to mourn her husband. The funeral director approached me with that quiet, rehearsed sympathy they all seem to have. "Mr. Morrison, should we wait a few more minutes?" I cleared my throat, trying to keep what little dignity I had left. "No, let's begin." 37 people came to say goodbye to my son. I counted them. 37 people who cared enough to honor his memory. His wife wasn't one of them. I delivered the eulogy myself. What else could I do? I spoke about Richard's childhood, his love for baseball, how he'd graduated summa cum laude from Northwestern, how proud I was when he started his own consulting firm. I didn't mention how he'd been struggling with anxiety or how distant he'd become over the past few years, even from me. And I definitely didn't mention how his marriage had been falling apart, though I'd seen the cracks forming long ago. As people filed past the casket, offering condolences, I heard the whispers. "Where's Olivia? Isn't that his wife? How awful for her to miss this." Their pity stung more than anything else. If only they knew. After the service, I drove to the cemetery alone. The hearse followed behind me, carrying my son's body. I should have been focused on saying goodbye, on grieving properly. But my mind kept circling back to one burning question. Where the hell was she? That evening, I sat in my kitchen staring at my phone. I'd called Olivia 6 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. I'd sent texts. No reply. Richard's death had been so sudden. A heart attack at 34, they said. Stress-related. When the hospital called, I phoned Olivia right away. She'd sounded devastated, crying, promising she'd fly back from her sister's place in Phoenix to help with the arrangements. That was 4 days ago. Grief makes you do strange things. That night, I opened my laptop and looked up her social media for the first time. Richard had always kept his private life private, and I'd never bothered with Facebook or Instagram before. But something in me needed answers. I found her account easily. Her profile picture was still her and Richard from their last anniversary, both smiling, his arm around her. She looked radiant, happy, or so I thought. Then I started scrolling. Photos from Phoenix. Dinners with her sister. Shopping trips. All posted after Richard's death. She didn't look grief-stricken in any of them. Not even close. And then I found it. A post from just 3 hours ago, while I was delivering my son's eulogy. Olivia, in a bright red bikini, cocktail in hand, standing on a beach with crystal blue water behind her. Next to her stood a man I recognized, Miguel, the gardener who'd been working on their yard for months. His arm was around her waist. Both of them smiling, carefree. The location tag read, Cancun, Mexico. The caption said, "Life's too short not to live it. Cheers to new beginnings." I stared at that photo for 20 long minutes, reading and rereading those words. While I stood over my son's grave, throwing dirt onto his coffin, his wife was toasting new beginnings on a beach in Mexico with another man. The comments made it worse. Friends congratulating her on the trip, asking if she was finally happy, and telling her she deserved this. But one comment from her sister made my stomach twist. "So glad you're done with all that drama. Miguel is perfect for you. Done with all that drama." My son's death was drama to be done with. I closed the laptop, feeling sick, and walked to the liquor cabinet, something I almost never did. I poured myself 3 fingers of whiskey and sat back down, tried to process what I'd just seen. 8 years of marriage. 8 years of family dinners, birthdays, and holidays. I'd watched Olivia become part of our family, cared for her like a daughter. I'd even defended her when Richard complained about their fights. Marriage takes patience, I'd told him. What a fool I was, I muttered. My phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. But before I even looked, I knew. "Dad, come to my house now. We need to talk." Don't tell anyone. Richard. I dropped the phone. It hit the kitchen floor, the screen cracking, but I barely noticed. My hands were shaking so hard I could hardly pick it up again. I read the message once, twice, then 5 more times. It had to be a mistake, a cruel prank. Someone had gotten hold of his phone, but the number, it was different. Who would do something so twisted? My heart was pounding as I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. I had to see for myself, because one thing was certain. I had buried my son this morning, and dead men don't send text messages. The drive to Richard's house was a blur. The familiar tree-lined street looked exactly the same, but everything felt off, wrong somehow. I'd been there just 2 days earlier, helping Olivia pack some of Richard's things before her supposed trip to Phoenix. She'd been crying then, or at least I thought she had been. Now, the house sat dark under the October sky. Only one light glowed faintly from the kitchen window. My hand trembled as I used my spare key to open the front door. Richard, my voice cracked. Silence. I stepped through the living room, past the couch where I'd comforted Olivia after the hospital call, past the family photos on the mantel. Richard's graduation, their wedding day, Christmas mornings. Everything looked exactly the same, yet none of it made sense anymore. The kitchen light drew me forward. When I turned the corner, I froze. My son sat at the kitchen table, alive. A cup of coffee, gone cold, sat in front of him. He looked up when I entered, pale, gaunt, dark circles shadowing his eyes. He'd lost weight, and his clothes hung loosely from his frame. "Dad," he said softly, "I'm sorry. I couldn't move, couldn't speak." My brain refused to process what I was seeing. This was my son, breathing, 3 hours after I'd watched his coffin lowered into the ground. "You're supposed to be dead." The words came out strangled. "I know," he whispered. "I know how this looks, how insane it sounds. Please sit down. Let me explain. I didn't move. I buried you today, Richard. I gave your eulogy. What kind of sick game is this?" "It's not a game," he said quietly, standing with deliberate care. "Dad, I'm in serious trouble. The kind of trouble that could destroy not just me, but you, too. Everything we've built." "What are you talking about?" He ran a shaking hand through his hair, a gesture I'd seen since he was a boy, whenever he was scared. "6 months ago, I made a mistake at work," he began. "A huge one. I was handling the Meridian Industries account. Remember them? The pharmaceutical company. Our biggest client, worth over $2.5 million a year." I nodded numbly. He'd talked about that account for months. It was supposed to secure his firm's future. "I found out they were falsifying clinical trial data," Richard said, his voice trembling. "They were hiding serious side effect from a new arthritis drug. People were getting sick, Dad. Some were dying." I felt my stomach drop. "I should have reported it right away," he continued. "But their CEO, James Crawford, offered me $500,000 to stay quiet." "Just look the other way," he said. "Let the FDA approval go through." "Please tell me you didn't take it," I said quietly. Richard's silence was answer enough. "Jesus, Richard, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about Olivia's spending. The mortgage, the debts, the renovations she wanted, the car, the Europe trip. We were drowning, Dad." He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. "I thought $500,000 would fix everything." He paused, voice breaking. "But I couldn't do it. I couldn't let people die for money. So I went to the FBI. I turned over all the evidence. Crawford was arrested last month, and the drug was pulled from the market. But before they caught him," Richard said quietly, staring out the kitchen window into the darkness, "Crawford made sure I'd pay for betraying him." His voice was calm, but the tension beneath, it was unmistakable. "Dad, Crawford has connections. Dangerous ones. The kind of people who don't forgive and definitely don't forget. 3 weeks ago, the threat started. Phone calls, messages. They told me I'd ruined too many careers, cost too many people too much money. They wanted me gone permanently." I sank into a chair, my legs finally giving out. "So, you faked your death," I said softly. Richard nodded. "Dr. Peterson helped me. He's an old college friend, works at the hospital now. We staged the heart attack, falsified the death certificate, everything. Peterson said I had only hours before Crawford's people found me. It was the only way. The pieces were starting to fall into place. But one question still burned in my mind. What about Olivia? Richard's expression darkened. She knew, Dad. About everything. The Meridian account, the hush money, the threats. She was supposed to help me disappear. When I called her that night, she cried, played the perfect role. The grieving wife. But she already knew. He paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. She was supposed to keep up the act for 6 months. Play the devastated widow, then quietly move to Canada and meet me there. We'd start over. That was the plan. He gave a bitter, broken laugh. But then I saw her Instagram post in Cancun with Miguel. She was supposed to wait, Dad. We had a plan, apparently. She had a better one. I thought of that photo, her radiant smile, the champagne glass in her hand, the caption about new beginnings. She was never planning to meet you, was she? I asked quietly. Richard shook his head. No. I figured it out when I saw my life insurance policy had been cashed in, $750,000. Paid out to my loving widow just yesterday. He turned to face me, his jaw clenched. She played her part perfectly. The shocked wife. The grieving widow. Too distraught to even attend the funeral. Probably thought being mysteriously absent would make her look even more tragic. The full weight of it hit me like a punch to the chest. She let me bury an empty coffin. She let me mourn my son while she sipped cocktails on a beach with her lover. I'm sorry, Dad, Richard said softly. I never meant for you to get hurt like this. I thought if I could just disappear, you'd be safe. But I can't let her get away with what she's done. She didn't just betray me. She betrayed you. She made you suffer while she counted her money. I looked at him, thinner, haunted but alive, and felt something shift inside me. The grief that had consumed me for days hardened into something else. Something cold and deliberate. What do we do now? I asked. For the first time since I'd walked into that kitchen, I saw the spark of determination that used to define my son. Now, he said, we make sure she doesn't get to enjoy that money. And we make sure she pays for what she's done. Ow, I asked. A slow smile spread across his face, one I recognized all too well. The same calculating look I used to see in the mirror. Well, Dad, he said, legally speaking, I'm still dead. Which means Olivia is about to learn that being married to a dead man comes with some very serious complications. He moved to the counter and pulled out a laptop I didn't recognize. His movements were calm, methodical, like someone who'd been planning something for a long time. There's more you need to see, he said. Things I discovered after I was supposed to be dead. He turned the screen toward me. Olivia's name appeared across emails, bank transfers, and message logs. She wasn't planning to meet me in Canada, Dad, Richard continued. She was planning to destroy me. Long before any of this happened. He opened a folder filled with spreadsheets, screenshots, and receipts. 3 months ago, I noticed money missing from our joint accounts, small amounts at first. 200 here, 300 there. When I asked her about it, she said she was buying surprise anniversary gifts. He clicked again. She was buying gifts. Just not for me. Photos of diamond jewelry, designer handbags, and luxury hotel bills filled the screen, all charged to Richard's account. She said she was visiting her sister in Phoenix, he said bitterly. Turns out, she was visiting Miguel. I felt my hands clench into fists. She was using your money to cheat on you? Richard nodded. It gets worse. When the FBI investigation started, and I told her I might need witness protection, she didn't hesitate. Said it would be an adventure, a chance to start fresh. I believed her. He opened another folder. But she was already talking to a private investigator, not to protect me, but to build a case against me. The screen showed message threads between Olivia and someone from Marcus Financial Services. She was telling him I was unstable, Richard said quietly. That I'd been drinking, that my anxiety was out of control, that I was paranoid after the whistleblower case. She was documenting everything, creating a record that I was mentally unwell. I leaned closer, reading her words, cold, calculated, deliberate. She wasn't just trying to have me committed, Richard said, his voice breaking. She was setting up a story where my death would look like suicide, the anxious, unstable whistleblower who couldn't handle the pressure. She even researched how to make it look like I'd been planning it for months. He clicked to another file, his hand trembling slightly. Dad, you haven't seen the worst of it yet. Title. She collected the payout. but I was never really dead. Richard opened another folder on the laptop and pushed the screen toward me. Financial documents filled the display. Additional life insurance policies taken out in his name without his knowledge. Policies worth over $1 million in total. Each one had a suicide clause that would still pay out after the 2-year waiting period. He's been planning this for 2 years, Dad, Richard said quietly. Long before Meridian. She married me, convinced me to buy huge policies, and then waited for the right moment to collect. The room tilted. This was more than betrayal or greed. This was deliberate. Olivia hadn't just wanted money. She'd been preparing a way to get it that might have included murder or forcing him to take his own life. The private investigator she'd hired had been compiling a dossier. Stressed husband, mounting debts, signs of depression. It would have been a perfect cover story. I paced, staring out at the quiet street. From the outside, everything looked ordinary. Inside, I was discovering that the woman I'd treated like a daughter had been quietly planning to end my son's life for cash. Richard continued, but then I faked my death first. Dr. Peterson's plan gave me an unexpected advantage. He showed a new screen of bank transfers. Olivia thought she'd won. The insurance money hit her account Monday. $50,000 went to Miguel on Tuesday. Plane tickets to Cancun bought Wednesday morning. She was gone before anyone realized anything. Except I wasn't dead. His face sharpened. She doesn't know I'm alive, and she doesn't know I had this evidence before the funeral. You think she covered her tracks, but I documented everything. He opened a folder labeled Insurance Fraud Evidence. The files made my breath catch. Forged applications, unauthorized policies, payments to the private investigator, receipts for hotels, and jewelry charged to his accounts. Even messages showing she'd researched ways to make a death look accidental. She committed multiple felonies, Richard said, voice low, insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, theft. Adultery may have financial implications for divorce proceedings she was trying to avoid by becoming a widow. I sank back into my chair, the enormity of it settling over me. We could go to the police, have her arrested. But Richard explained the complication. If he revealed he was alive, he'd have to explain why he faked his death. Dr. Peterson could face criminal charges for falsifying records. The FBI would be furious. Crawford's people would know exactly where to find him. Revealing himself would trade one danger for another. So we're not stuck, Richard said, meeting my eyes. We have to be smarter. Olivia had the money and the freedom, at least on the surface. She probably planned to lie low in Mexico, let the mourning period pass, then come home, sell the house, and vanish with the payoff. But legally, because I'm still listed as dead, she can't touch many of our assets while probate is pending. That delay buys time he had already used to his advantage. Richard's expression grew colder. Dead men can still file insurance disputes. He explained how he'd set traps in advance. Before dying, he prepared and authorized his lawyer to file disputes under specific conditions. As far as the insurers know, Richard Morrison suspected his wife and took precautions. He pulled up legal paperwork. Dispute filing staged a trigger if certain payouts cleared. A revised will made the day before his fake death cutting Olivia out due to suspected infidelity and financial impropriety. I realized then how meticulous his planning was. You thought of everything, I said. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. Not everything. I didn't expect her to be so brazen as to post vacation photos 3 days after my funeral. That was a gift. Those photos, coupled with the bank records showing transfers to Miguel, would make the fraud case nearly airtight. What about Miguel? I asked. He's complicit, Richard said. He's on the records, receiving money. He helped her hide their meetings. That gives us more leverage. He shut the laptop and leaned back. Here's the plan. Let her get comfortable for 2 weeks. Let her spin, plan, relax. Then we systematically tear down every lie she's built. I've already initiated disputes with all 3 insurance companies. Investigations will start and accounts will be frozen within days of being opened. I set all this up before I died, with instructions to my lawyer. As far as the insurers are concerned, I took precautions because I feared for my life. He folded his hands and looked at me with a steadiness I hadn't seen in ages. The anxious, overwhelmed son I'd worried over had become someone deliberate and dangerous, a strategist. If the investigation succeed, he said, Olivia loses access to her windfall and criminal charges follow. If she tries to sell the house or liquidate assets, probate will stop it. If she returns to the U.S., she'll face subpoenas, arrests, and forfeiture of funds. He tapped the laptop. We'll hand the evidence to the right people at the right time, without exposing me until it's safe. I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Justice felt possible, but the path was treacherous. And Miguel asked again. He's exposed, Richard said. He helped her. He'll be named in the investigations. Once his name is tied to the transfers and the hotel receipts, he has no choice but to cooperate or face charges himself. He stood, folding the laptop closed with slow precision. I'm not asking you to forgive her, he said. I'm asking you to trust that I'll make sure she doesn't enjoy what she stole. We'll let the law do most of the work. We just have to be patient and methodical. Outside, the world remained ordinary and placid. Inside the kitchen, with the laptop closed and the evidence laid bare, a new kind of resolve settled over us both. One born not of grief alone, but of the cold, exacting need to undo a carefully constructed betrayal. Title: She buried an empty coffin, but I was never dead. Miguel's the least of our problems, Richard said flatly, closing his laptop. He's just a guy who thought he was dating a rich widow. When Olivia's money vanishes and the fraud charges hit, he'll be gone. Men like him don't stick around for broke women with legal issues. I studied my son, torn between pride and unease. This is a dangerous game, Richard. What if Olivia figures out you're alive? He didn't hesitate. Then we move faster. But I doubt she will. She's too busy celebrating her victory to question anything. He leaned back, calm but razor-focused. Besides, she already made her biggest mistake. She underestimated us. She thought you'd mourn quietly and never ask questions. And she thought I was too weak to fight back. His eyes hardened. She was wrong on both counts. Something shifted inside me then, an unexpected steadiness. What do you need me to do? For now, just keep playing the part, he said. Be the grieving father. Don't change your routine. But in 2 weeks, when her accounts are frozen and she comes running for help, that's when we spring the trap. The next 2 weeks felt like walking a tightrope. Every day, I had to pretend to mourn a son who was actually alive, hiding just 20 minutes away in a small apartment rented under a false name. Every visit to Richard's grave felt like a cruel performance, placing flowers on a coffin filled with weighted pillows. But it had to look real. Neighbors often stopped by the cemetery. Mrs. Henderson from down the street approached me once, her voice trembling with pity. Such a tragedy, Timothy. Poor Olivia, losing Richard so young. Is she holding up all right? I haven't seen her around. She's taking some time away. I lied smoothly, staying with family. The grief has been overwhelming. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been monitoring Olivia's every move online. Her Instagram was a gallery of her so-called healing. Beachside dinners, spa days, sunset cocktails, all in Cancun. Miguel appeared in nearly every post, his arm around her, his lips on her cheek. Her friends flooded the comments with encouragement. Asterisk, so proud of you for choosing happiness. Asterisk, asterisk, Richard would want you to live your best life. Asterisk, I nearly shattered my phone reading those words. Meanwhile, Richard was working behind the scenes. From his safe hideout, he'd been feeding investigators every shred of evidence. Time-stamped photos, transaction records, copies of forged insurance documents. The investigators say it's one of the clearest cases of insurance fraud they've ever seen, Richard told me during one of our secret meetings at a diner outside town. He looked healthier now, less haunted, more in control. 3 insurance companies, $1.7 million in fraudulent claims. And she's practically posting the evidence herself. When do they act? I asked. Today, he said, stirring his coffee. By tomorrow morning, her accounts will be frozen. She spent close to 80 grand in Cancun already. Where her card stopped working, reality will hit hard. What if she just stays in Mexico? Disappears? She can't, Richard said simply. Miguel doesn't have that kind of money, and her accounts are tied to the frozen ones. She'll have to come back. She has no choice. He was right. By Thursday, my phone started buzzing, Olivia's number flashing again and again. I ignored them all. By evening, 12 messages waited. The first few were confused. Asterisk, Timothy, something's wrong with my bank accounts. Can you call me, please? Asterisk. By the 7th, panic had set in. Asterisk, Timothy, I'm stuck in Mexico. The hotel says my cards aren't working. I need you to wire me money until I figure this out. Asterisk. The last ones were desperate. Asterisk, please, Timothy, I know you're getting these. They won't let me leave until I pay my bill. I'm scared. Please help me. Asterisk. The next morning, I played them for Richard. He listened in silence, his face unreadable. No gloating, no triumph, just grim justice. She's really panicking, I said. Good, he replied coldly. She should be. He closed his laptop. The FBI contacted my lawyer yesterday. Well, technically my estate's lawyer. They're investigating Olivia for financial crimes related to my death. They want to interview the surviving family. That means you and her, once she's back. And according to the Mexican authorities, that'll be soon. They won't hold her indefinitely, I said. But without access to her money, how's she supposed to leave? That's where Miguel comes in. Richard's expression darkened. He's been bragging online about his rich American girlfriend, posting photos of her gifts, the luxury hotels. When the money stopped yesterday, so did his affection. He ditched her, caught the first flight back to Chicago this morning. So she's alone? Alone, broke, and terrified, Richard said. And honestly, I almost feel sorry for her. He paused, then added quietly, almost. I didn't feel sorry at all. Every memory of standing over that fake grave erased any trace of pity. When does she get back? I asked. Tomorrow evening, he said. Her sister wired her just enough for a flight home. But she's walking into a very different world. Are you ready for this? I asked. Richard nodded slowly. I've been ready since I saw those photos of her laughing on the beach while you buried an empty coffin. She humiliated you, Dad. She made you grieve alone while she celebrated her payday with another man. I'm not letting that go. And you're sure this will work? The fraud case is airtight, Richard said. She'll either take a plea deal or face trial. Either way, she's looking at years in prison. The money's gone, her reputation's destroyed, and once the legal fees hit, she'll own more than she ever stole. He looked out the diner window, his reflection cold and certain. But that's just the beginning. The real justice comes when everyone learns the truth. Her friends, her family, our neighbors. They'll see her not as the grieving widow, but as the con artist who faked her sorrow for money. He looked back at me. When she tries to contact you, let her. But remember, you still think I'm dead. You're just a father finding out who your daughter-in-law really is. He reached across the table, his hand firm around mine. I'm sorry you have to keep pretending to mourn me, Dad. I know it's not easy. I squeezed his hand. Having you alive and safe is worth every minute of pretending. He smiled faintly. This will all be over soon. Once Olivia is arrested and the truth comes out, I can start the process of legally returning. It'll be complicated, but Dr. Peterson has connections who can help. I nodded, exhaling slowly. The end was finally in sight. Olivia's lies had taken everything from us. Our peace, our trust, even our grief. But in just a few days, she was going to learn that some lies don't stay buried, especially when the dead don't stay dead. And then what? I asked quietly. You can't just go back to your old life. Richard shook his head. No, I can't. Richard Morrison has to stay dead, at least on paper. But Timothy Morrison's son, he can start over. Somewhere new, with a clean slate and a new name. His voice softened. Maybe even with his father, if that father's ready to leave this place behind and start fresh too. I looked at him, my son, alive and determined, and thought about my empty house, the silence that had haunted me since his supposed death. The idea of starting over, of having him back in my life, was more tempting than I wanted to admit. We'll see, I said. First, let's make sure Olivia gets exactly what she deserves. Richard smiled, not the cold, calculated smirk I'd grown used to these past few weeks, but a real smile. Oh, she will, Dad. Tomorrow night, when she walks into that house thinking she's coming home to her quiet widow life, she's going to learn that some lies come with consequences she never imagined. Olivia's plane landed at 8:30 that cold Friday night. I knew because I'd been tracking it obsessively, the same way I'd monitored her every move for the past 2 weeks. Richard and I had spent the afternoon finalizing what he called the confrontation. At 9:45, my phone rang. Olivia's number flashed on the screen. I let it ring a few times before answering, just long enough to sound like a man drowning in grief. "Timothy," she said, her voice trembling. "Thank God you answered. Everything's been a nightmare. The flight delays, my phone not working. I've been trying to reach you for days." "Olivia," I said evenly. "I was wondering when you'd be back. I'm at the house, but something's wrong. My key doesn't work, and there's some kind of notice on the door. I can't read it properly in the dark." Her voice cracked. "Could you come over? Please? I don't want to be alone right now." I glanced at the clock. Right on schedule. The locksmith Richard had hired had changed the locks earlier that afternoon, and the notice she was staring at was from the FBI, an official statement declaring the property part of an active fraud investigation. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. "Thank you, Timothy. You're the only family I have left now that Richards." She stopped herself, letting out a shaky sound that was somewhere between a sob and exhaustion. The drive to my son's house felt surreal. I'd made that trip hundreds of times, family dinners, holidays, fixing broken things around the house. But tonight, every mile felt like a countdown to justice. Olivia stood on the porch when I pulled up, looking nothing like the glowing woman from her Cancun photos. Her hair was tied in a messy ponytail, her skin pale, her clothes wrinkled as if she hadn't slept in days. "Timothy," she said, rushing forward to hug me. I stepped back just slightly. She froze mid-step, confusion flashing across her face. "Let me see the notice," I said, walking past her toward the door. The document looked stark under the porch light, full of legal jargon about asset seizures and ongoing investigations. I read it slowly, watching her from the corner of my eye as she wrapped her arms around herself and started pacing. "I don't understand any of this," she said, her voice rising. "Why would the FBI be involved? Richard died of a heart attack. Natural causes." I turned to face her fully. Under the porch light, her face looked drawn, almost fragile. "Olivia," I asked, "where exactly have you been the past 2 weeks?" "I told you, in Phoenix with my sister. I needed time to grieve." Her tone was steady, rehearsed. "Then I took a few days in Mexico. The doctor said a change of scenery might help with the depression." "Mexico," I repeated slowly. "Just a few days," she said quickly. "Sarah thought it would be good for me." I nodded as if I understood. Grief affects people differently. Relief flickered in her eyes. "Exactly. Thank you for understanding. I knew you would." She gestured toward the house. "But I still don't understand this. Why the FBI? Why the locks? I might have a number that can help," I said, pulling out my phone. "Let's call Richard's lawyer. He might know what's going on." "Yes, please. This must be a mistake," she said eagerly. I dialed the number Richard had given me. David Chun, his lawyer, was expecting the call. He answered on the second ring. "David, it's Timothy. I'm here at Richard's house with Olivia. There's an FBI notice about an investigation." I paused, pretending to listen. "Uh-huh. I see. When did this happen?" Olivia stepped closer, straining to hear. "In fraud," I said loudly, enough for her to catch the word. "What do you mean, insurance fraud?" The color drained from Olivia's face. "What is he saying?" she demanded, grabbing my arm. I held up a finger, pretending to listen. "Multiple policies? Unauthorized applications." I looked directly at her. "David, Olivia is right here. She says she doesn't know anything about this." "Timothy, what's going on?" Her voice trembled. "Why would he say that?" "He says the FBI has evidence someone forged Richard's signature on several large life insurance policies," I said, watching her closely. "Policies taken out shortly before his death." "That's ridiculous," she cried. "Richard died of a heart attack. You know that." I kept my tone calm. "He also mentioned suspicious financial activity, transfers, large withdrawals, luxury expenses." Her hands were shaking now. "This is insane. Tell him it's a mistake." I don't know anything about it. I looked at her, unblinking. David wants to know if you can account for your whereabouts over the last 2 weeks. The FBI apparently traced large cash transactions right after Richard's death. I was grieving. I was with my sister, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Funny, I said quietly. He also mentioned photos posted from Cancun. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Olivia's face went white. H, how do they know about Cancun? She whispered. And that slip was all it took. I ended the fake call and put my phone away. So, I said softly, you were in Cancun, not Phoenix. I can explain, she stammered. After Phoenix, I needed more time. My sister thought Mexico might be therapeutic. I finished for her, my tone cold. Was Miguel therapeutic too? Her mouth fell open, eyes wide with shock. How do you know about Miguel? I didn't answer. I just looked at her, the mask gone, her lies unraveling one by one, as the sound of sirens began to echo faintly in the distance. She was about to learn that every deception has its reckoning. The FBI showed me photos. Olivia, I said, my voice low but hard. Photos of you in Cancun with another man. Photos posted while I was standing over my son's grave, throwing dirt onto his coffin. Her lips trembled, eyes darting away. They showed me pictures of you celebrating with your lover. I continued, my tone turning colder. And they told me what you used to pay for that trip. Richard's life insurance money. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they looked more like fear than remorse. Timothy, you don't understand, she said shakily. I loved Richard, but our marriage was complicated. He was distant, anxious all the time. Miguel was just a friend, someone who helped me through a difficult time. I stared at her. A friend you were sleeping with for 8 months while married to my son? Her mouth opened, then closed again. She realized too late she'd said too much. Look, she stammered, I made mistakes, but Richard's gone, and nothing can change that. Can't we just move forward as family? I studied her, the woman I'd welcomed into our home 8 years ago. The woman I defended when Richard came to me in tears after one of their fights. The woman who had stood in my kitchen days after my son's death, crying into my arms about how much she missed him. You're right about one thing, Olivia, I said quietly. Nothing can change the past. Nothing can change the fact that you let me bury my son alone while you were drinking on a beach with your boyfriend. I turned toward my car. The FBI will be in touch. You'd better get a good lawyer. Timothy, wait, she cried. Please, you have to help me. I don't have anywhere else to go. I stopped and looked back one last time. You should have thought about that before you decided to cash in on my son's death. Then I walked away, leaving her standing alone on the porch of a house she no longer had the right to enter. In my rearview mirror, I saw her collapse onto the steps, her head in her hands. But I didn't stop. I couldn't, because it wasn't over. Not yet. 20 minutes later, I pulled into the parking lot of Richard's temporary apartment. He was waiting by the window, shoulders tense. From the look on his face, he already knew the confrontation had gone as planned. How did she look? He asked as I stepped inside. Terrified, exhausted, caught, I said, sinking into the worn sofa. She tried to lie at first, but when I mentioned the FBI photos and Miguel, she fell apart. Richard exhaled slowly. Good. She needs to understand that actions have consequences. He started pacing, that restless energy radiating off him again. Tomorrow morning, she'll wake up to FBI agents pounding on her door. They'll arrest her for insurance fraud. And that's when the real consequences begin. I studied him carefully. Are you ready for what comes next? He stopped pacing and met my eyes. Dad, I've been dead for 2 weeks. Tomorrow, I get to come back to life and watch the woman who betrayed us both face justice. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the parking lot in white. Tomorrow would bring the final act of our plan, and Olivia would learn that betrayal comes with a price. At 6:30 the next morning, the FBI arrested Olivia at the budget motel where she'd spent the night. She tried to run, but there's only one exit in a room like that. Richard's contact at the bureau called him with updates. By the time we met at the diner later that morning, he looked different, lighter, calmer. Free. She's been charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering, he said, stirring his coffee absently. Bail's $500,000. Can she pay it? I asked. With what money? Richard's tone was almost amused. Her accounts are frozen. Her cards are maxed out from Cancun, and Miguel vanished the moment her money ran out. Her sister doesn't have that kind of cash. I pictured her in a holding cell, still in those wrinkled clothes, mascara smudged, the reality finally setting in. 2 weeks ago, I might have pitied her. Now, all I felt was a cold satisfaction. When do you come back from the dead? I asked. Richard smiled, a real smile this time. This afternoon. Dr. Peterson's handling everything with the hospital and the police. Official story is there was a patient ID mix-up. I wasn't dead, just in a coma. A miracle recovery. Will anyone believe it? It doesn't matter, he said. It's legally documented. And once I'm officially alive again, all her insurance claims become void. She'll owe every penny back, with interest. She's looking at 10 to 15 years in prison. He paused, then added, and she'll cooperate with the FBI once she learns the truth about her precious Miguel. I frowned. What truth? Miguel wasn't just a gardener, Richard said darkly. He's been running a long con, seducing wealthy, unhappy wives, convincing them to defraud their husband's insurance. Olivia is his third victim. The FBI's been tracking him for over a year. So she thought she was playing you, I said slowly. But he was playing her. Exactly. He probably talked her into taking out extra policies. Maybe even helped her plan how to make my death look natural. She thought she was the predator, but she was just prey. Where is he now? Mexico. Or Costa Rica. Somewhere without extradition. But they'll catch him. Eventually. Richard stared out the diner window at the gray October morning. The important thing is, Olivia will realize she threw away her marriage, her life, and her freedom for a man who never cared about her. That afternoon, I drove to the hospital to witness my son's resurrection. Dr. Peterson met me in the lobby, looking tense but resolute. Are you ready for this, Timothy? I've been ready for weeks, I said. We rode the elevator to the 4th floor, the same one where Richard had died. When I walked into the room, he was sitting up in bed in a hospital gown, looking pale but alert. Dad, he said weakly. What happened? I remember chest pains and then nothing. Even knowing it was an act, hearing his voice made my throat tighten. You've been in a coma, I said softly. We thought we lost you. Dr. Peterson entered, clipboard in hand. Mr. Morrison, there was a major medical error. Your son was never deceased. A malfunction caused false readings, and staff misidentified the patient. He was in a catatonic state that mimicked death. But we had a funeral, I said, keeping up the act. I know, the doctor said gravely. We're conducting a full internal investigation. The hospital will cover all related expenses. Richard reached for my hand, his voice trembling perfectly. Dad, I'm so sorry. I can't imagine what you went through. What matters, I said, is that you're alive. When can he go home? I asked the doctor. A few days, he replied. We just need to monitor his recovery. And of course, we'll notify his wife immediately. I hesitated. About that. Olivia was arrested this morning. Insurance fraud. Richard's eyes widened in feigned shock. Arrested? What? What? While you were in your coma, she filed multiple life insurance claims, I explained. She'd taken out policies in your name, without your consent. The FBI says she was working with Miguel. Our gardener, he asked, perfectly bewildered. Dr. Peterson stepped back politely. Perhaps I should let you both process this privately. When the doctor left, Richard looked at me. 8 years of marriage, he said quietly, and she tried to profit off my death. I'm sorry, son, I said, but justice caught up with her. He took a deep breath. Good. She deserves it. 3 months later, Robert Morrison Consulting opened in Charlotte, North Carolina, with Robert Morrison as CEO and Timothy Morrison as senior partner. We specialized in fraud prevention and corporate ethics. Olivia was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison after pleading guilty. Miguel was captured in Guatemala months later, charged with defrauding 6 families. On the anniversary of Richard's supposed death, we visited the empty grave that still bore his old name. Do you ever regret it? He asked quietly. I thought for a long moment. I regret that it came to this. I regret her choices. But I don't regret protecting us. He nodded. She could have chosen honesty. She chose greed instead. The consequences were hers to bear. As we walked back to the car, I realized how much had changed in a single year. I'd lost a son and gained him back. Lost a daughter-in-law and gained my peace. Lost my retirement and found a purpose. Olivia had tried to profit from Richard's death. But in the end, his resurrection gave us both something far greater, a second chance at life. Sometimes, justice comes in the most unexpected form. Olivia rushed forward to hug me the moment I stepped out of the car. Her body trembled against mine. Her perfume mixed with the cold night air and the faint scent of desperation. "Oh, Timothy," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Everything's falling apart. They froze all my accounts. My cards don't work. I didn't do anything wrong, I swear. It's all a misunderstanding." I stepped back slowly, keeping my voice calm. "A misunderstanding? Olivia, the FBI doesn't investigate misunderstandings." Her eyes widened. You know, I nodded toward the door. "Let's go inside. We should talk." She hesitated, glancing at the bright yellow FBI seal taped to the front door. I tried calling them. They said they're investigating fraud, but I don't understand. Richard handled all the finances. Her voice grew sharp with panic. "Maybe someone hacked our accounts. You have to believe me, Timothy." I didn't answer. Instead, I led her down the side of the house toward the garden. Richard's garden, once full of his favorite roses, now overgrown and neglected. The moonlight caught the tears glistening on her cheeks. "Please," she said softly, "you're all I have left. Richard's gone. Everything's gone." I looked at her. This woman who had stood beside my son's coffin, tears streaming down her face, whispering promises of eternal love while planning a luxury escape with another man. "Are you sure," I asked quietly, "that Richard is gone?" Her face stiffened. "What do you mean?" "Because," I said, taking a step closer, "you seem awfully nervous for someone who believes her husband's truly dead." I don't understand." "Oh, I think you do." She backed up a step. "Timothy, you're scaring me." "Good," I said. "You should be." At that moment, headlights cut through the dark. A black sedan rolled into the driveway and came to a stop. Two men in suits stepped out, badges glinting in the light. Olivia turned toward them, confusion turning to fear. "Mrs. Olivia Morrison," one of them called out. Her voice trembled. "Yes. I'm Agent Walker with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We have a warrant for your arrest, insurance fraud, falsification of death certificates, and conspiracy to defraud multiple companies." Olivia's mouth fell open. "That's impossible. Richard is dead. I have proof." The second agent handed her a folder. "You might want to look at this." Inside were photographs, recent ones. Richard at the diner. Richard signing statements. Richard alive. She stared at the pictures as the color drained from her face. "No," she whispered. "No, that's not possible." But when the car door opened again and Richard stepped out, alive, calm, and staring right at her, the world seemed to stop. Olivia stumbled backward, her knees buckling. "Richard," he didn't answer at first. He just looked at her with quiet disgust. "You always were a terrible liar, Olivia." Her breathing quickened. "You set me up," she hissed. "You faked your own death to trap me." Richard shook his head. "No, you faked my death. I just survived it." The agents moved in, reading her rights as she started screaming, pleading, denying, cursing. But her words didn't matter anymore. The truth had already spoken louder. As they led her to the car, she turned to me, her eyes wild. "You knew. You both knew." I met her gaze without flinching. "You took my son from me once, Olivia. I just made sure you never did it again." The car door slammed shut. Silence filled the air, thick, heavy, final. Richard stood beside me, watching as the taillights disappeared down the long, dark road. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said softly, "It's over." I nodded. "No, son. It's just beginning. You've got your life back now. Don't waste it." He looked at me, the anger gone from his face, replaced by something softer, almost peaceful. "I won't. I promise." We stood there for a long time, father and son, beneath the same stars that had watched over his fake funeral. Only this time, There were no lies left to bury. And as the night wind rustled through the overgrown roses, I realized something. Revenge hadn't brought us peace. Truth had. Because sometimes justice doesn't come from hatred. It comes from finally making the dead live again and letting the guilty bury themselves.